The sun burned high above the alien city of Dravavik Prime. Tall metal towers stood like silver spears, their shadows cutting across the busy marketplace. Among aliens with sharp teeth, glowing eyes and colorful skin, one figure looked out of place. An old human man pushed a rusty water cart, his back bent, his hands shaking, his clothes torn and faded. Some aliens looked at him with disgust, others laughed and pointed. "Look at that weak old creature," one alien vendor said. "Is he even alive?" Another alien chuckled. "He's so slow. He might turn to dust before he reaches the other side of the street." The old man didn't speak, didn't look up, didn't react. He simply moved forward, one slow step at a time, the cart squeaking behind him. The sign on the cart said in shaky letters, "Water, pure, cheap." He rang a small bell as he walked, offering drinks to anyone who would stop. Most ignored him, some spit near his feet, but he kept moving. Then came a group of alien soldiers, young, cocky, and dressed in clean black armor. They walked with loud steps and loud mouths, pushing people aside as if they owned the place. "Hey, old man," one of them said, stepping in his path. "This is military ground now, move." The vendor looked up with tired eyes and gently nodded, trying to roll his cart to the side. But another soldier kicked one of the wheels, and the cart tilted. The water barrels crashed to the ground, spilling the clean water into the dirt. The old man's hands trembled as he tried to save what little he could. The crowd laughed, the soldiers laughed harder. Maybe he should sell mud instead, one said, slapping his own knee. Still, the old man said nothing, just bowed deeply, picked up the empty barrel, and turned away as he walked. No one saw the brief flash of something sharp in his eyes. It wasn't pain, it wasn't fear. It was something colder, something hidden. He disappeared into the side streets, his cart now half empty and broken. Later that night, as the stars blinked in the dark sky, a scream echoed from one of the alleys. Guards rushed to the spot, weapons ready, lights flashing. They found one of the cocky soldiers lying on the ground, still alive but unconscious. His armor was untouched, but his helmet had been carefully removed, and pinned to his chest was a piece of paper. The paper was old and wrinkled, but written on it was a strange set of symbols, human letters. Old Earth military code. None of the aliens could read it. The commander barked orders. "Find the human, the old one with the cart." But he was already gone. The next morning, the market was quieter. Some aliens whispered about what happened, but most tried to forget it. The other soldiers acted tough, but their eyes darted around, searching for shadows, and then, without warning, the old water vendor returned. Same cart, same tired look, same sign. He moved through the market slowly, like nothing had happened. Some stared at him with fear now, others with curiosity. But the vendor didn't speak, didn't explain, didn't even smile. Only one alien child dared to approach him. Offering a single credit coin for a cup of water, the vendor poured it carefully, handed it with steady hands. "Thank you, sir," the child said, surprised by the human's soft voice. The vendor only nodded, then kept walking, bell ringing softly behind him. Silence followed, and deep within a government building, the commander stared at the coded note found on the soldier. He had to know what it meant. He contacted the archives, asked for information on old human war units. Hours later, a message arrived. The pattern on the note matched a signature used by a legendary human squad group that vanished after the last war. A squad with no survivors, no names, only one word written in the records. Ash. The commander leaned back in his chair, cold sweat on his forehead. Could the old vendor be connected to that squad? Was he just a broken man selling water, or was he something far more dangerous? Outside, the bell rang again. The vendor moved through the streets, slowly, silently, and no one laughed this time. Not anymore. A quiet fear had started to grow in the alien barracks. The soldiers didn't say it out loud, but their eyes gave it away. One of their own had been taken down without a single wound, and no one knew how it happened. They had searched the market, searched the alleys, even flew over the district in patrol ships, but they found nothing, just an old man selling water. No weapons, no tech, not even a tracking signal on him. It didn't make sense, and that's what made it worse. Young Cadet Yuli couldn't sleep that night. He kept thinking about the human vendor's face, the tired eyes, the slow voice, the silence after the laughter died. He wasn't like the other humans Yuln had met before. There was something different about him. Like a storm wrapped in rags by morning, Yuln couldn't take it anymore. He left his post and walked through the lower marketplace, pretending to be off duty. The streets were calmer today, and the old vendor was there again, pushing the same broken cart, ringing the same soft bell. Yuln approached him carefully, trying not to look nervous. 1 unit of water, Yuln said, keeping his voice steady. The old man looked at him, then poured the water into a tin cup. He handed it over without a word. Yuln took it, then hesitated. "Did you see anything strange last night?" he asked softly. The vendor looked at him again, eyes deep like a quiet sea. "Strange?" he finally said. "Everything is strange when you stop pretending it's normal." Yuln didn't know what to say. The vendor leaned closer and whispered something under his breath. "Tell your commander." The ghost walked softly now. Yuln's heart skipped. He blinked, and the vendor had already turned away, rolling his cart back down the street. Yuln returned to the barracks, but he said nothing to anyone, not yet. He waited until night, then slipped into the command room where the message was being decoded. The commander stood over the table, watching the symbols light up on the screen. They had finally cracked part of the note left on the soldier. It wasn't just a message, it was a name, or rather, a warning. Ash. Activated Shadow Hand, a human. Black Ops squad that had been erased from records after the last war. Rumors said they didn't follow orders. They completed missions before anyone even asked. No known members, no known base. Just stories of impossible attacks and bodies left without a single sound. The commander closed the screen, his jaw tight. "This is not just an old vendor," he said. "This is a ghost from a war we hoped was buried." In the corner of the room, Yuln listened, fists clenched. He wasn't afraid anymore. He was fascinated. He remembered the vendor's words. The ghost walked softly now. That night, in a forgotten corner of the city, an alley camera blinked to life on its own. The feed showed nothing at first, just shadows. Then something moved too fast for the eye to follow. But there it was, a figure gliding between walls, climbing without sound, disappearing again. Security officers rushed to the alley minutes later, weapons drawn. They found no one. Just a small coin sitting on the floor. An old Earth military coin. Scarred with battle marks, the aliens stood still, not sure if they were dealing with one man or a memory that had come alive. And somewhere, under a cracked rooftop, the vendor cleaned his hands, filled another water barrel, and whispered to himself. Still too early to make noise. His voice was low, steady, calm, but the silence around him felt sharp like a blade waiting to be used. The water cart creaked as he rolled it out again into the moonlight, and the hunt, quiet and unseen, continued. The fire in his chest never truly went out. It only slept, like a beast waiting in the shadows. The old man, known to the street as nothing more than water vendor, sat alone that night under a broken street lamp. His cart was parked beside him, half empty, the metal still warm from the sun. He stared at a small metal locket in his hand, worn smooth from years of holding. Inside was a photo, barely visible now. 6 men and women stood proudly in military gear, arms slung over each other's shoulders. All of them smiling, except one. The man in the back, slightly older than the rest, stood stiff, serious, cold. It was him. A breeze blew across the street, stirring old papers and dust. He didn't blink. He didn't move. The smile of those ghosts in the photo burned into his memory. They were all gone now, all except him. He remembered that final mission, Bladestone Prime, the burning moons, the screaming skies, the betrayal. Their extraction was canceled without warning. Command left them behind, said it was too dangerous to return. So they fought, one by one, until only he remained. And in that silence, something inside him broke, not his body. His body had always, quotes, healed, but something deeper, colder, something that could never be patched. Zara watched from across the street. She'd been doing that a lot lately. Each time she looked at the old man, she saw less of a vendor and more of a ghost wearing human skin. Tonight, he looked even more distant, like part of him wasn't even there anymore. Her curiosity had become something else now. Worry, maybe even fear, but also something she couldn't name. She took a small step toward him, then stopped. The old man slowly looked up, his eyes meeting hers without surprise. He had felt her coming before she made a sound. "What do you want, girl?" he asked, his voice rough but calm. Zara's mouth was dry, but she forced herself to speak. "I saw your hand," she said. "The tattoo." He didn't reply, just waited. "I know who you were," she added. "Phantom Squad," he gave. A soft breath, something between a laugh and a sigh. "That was a long time ago," he said. Zara stepped closer. "But you're still him." The old man looked away, back to the photo. "Not anymore," he said. "Now I just give water to people who don't want it." She sat down beside him, slowly. For a moment, they said nothing. Then she asked, "Why hide?" He didn't answer at first. Then he said, "Because when you're the only one who survives, people stop calling you a hero." He looked at the stars. "They call you cursed." Zara didn't speak. The silence between them said enough, but inside the city walls, things were changing. New patrols were arriving, faster, better armed, wearing black armor with red visors. They didn't look like normal guards. They didn't ask questions. They just watched that night. As the old man slept beneath the stars, a strange hum filled the air. A silent ship, black as night, landed outside the market zone. From its belly stepped a figure cloaked in red with glowing eyes. He walked slowly through the street, pausing where the vendor's cart had rested hours ago. He knelt, touched the dirt, then stood and whispered, "So, you're still alive." The figure turned and walked away. He left no footprints, no scent, but the air felt heavier after he passed. Back under the lamp, the old man stirred in his sleep. His hand clenched the locket tightly. In his dream, the battlefield returned, but this time Zara was standing in the middle of it, surrounded by fire and smoke, calling his name. He woke suddenly, eyes sharp and wide. He stood slowly, bones cracking, but his balance perfect. It was coming. He could feel it in his blood. The past had found him, and this time, it wasn't going to let him walk away quietly. The marketplace changed overnight. It wasn't the stalls or the buildings that changed. It was the feeling in the air. People spoke softer, moved faster, avoided eye contact with the new guards. These weren't local patrols. They wore blood-red armor, didn't speak, and carried weapons that hummed with cold energy. The old man watched them from a distance. His cart sat beside him like always, but he didn't move. His hands stayed still. Resting on his knees, Zara ran up to him, breathless. "They've locked the west gate," she whispered. "No one's allowed to leave without permission." He didn't react. "They're searching for someone," she said. "They say a war criminal might be hiding in the slums." He finally looked at her. His eyes were tired but alert. "They already know who," he said quietly. Zara blinked, confused. "Then why don't they just take him?" The old man smiled faintly. "They don't want to take him," he said. "They want to scare him." Up on the central tower, a tall alien general stood watching the streets through a visor. His name was Threx, known for hunting rebel survivors and old war ghosts. He held a list of names all crossed out, except one. "Ghost Blade," he said softly. The name tasted like metal in his mouth. "We found your trail," he muttered. "And this time, you won't vanish." Zara returned to the market that night. The stalls were half empty. Vendors whispered about disappearances. People were being taken, mostly humans, mostly old. The guards gave no reason, only silence and red lights. She ran to where the old man usually slept, but he was gone. Only his cart remained. It was untouched, but something was different. She reached underneath and found a sealed pouch. Inside was a folded uniform, black and gray, with the phantom mark stitched on the chest. She stared at it, heart pounding. She wasn't sure if it was meant for her or if he had simply left it behind. The next morning, the water vendor returned like nothing had happened. He pushed the cart through the streets, nodding at people who wouldn't look at him. But his steps were heavier now. Zara met him near the edge of the market. She held the pouch in both hands. "You dropped this," she said. He looked at it, then at her. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he took it, placed it gently back under the cart, and said, "Don't speak of it again." She followed him in silence as he passed by alien guards who stared, but did not act. They watched him like hunters watch a lion that hasn't moved. Yet, Zara could feel it. They were waiting for something. Or someone. Suddenly, a loud blast shook the market. Smoke rose from a nearby alley. People screamed and ran. 3 guards rushed in, weapons ready. But when the smoke cleared, they found only a red mark on the wall, a symbol in water, shaped like a triangle. The crowd whispered. Some said it was a message, others said it was a ghost's warning. But one guard, pale and shaking, whispered to his commander, "It's him." Later that day, General Threx made a public speech. He stood on the tower and spoke through loudspeakers. "This sector is under new control," he said. "We will not tolerate old enemies hiding among the weak." He held up a small metal flask, dented and worn. It belonged to the old vendor. "We know he's here," Threx growled, "and we will burn this market to the ground if we must." Zara watched from the shadows. She turned to where the old man once stood, but he was gone again. She felt fear rising in her throat. The city was turning into a trap, and the bait was already in place. But deep in the tunnels below the market, the old man stood before a hidden wall. His fingers traced a code into a rusted panel. The door opened with a quiet hiss, revealing a sealed locker. Inside it was a mask, dark and smooth, shaped like a blade. He held it for a moment, then placed it over his face. The metal clicked softly into place. He walked back into the light. Slowly, calmly, and above him, in the tower, Threx stopped speaking. He looked at the camera. Feed, eyes wide. The vendor cart rolled into view, and behind it, the last warrior of Phantom Squad stepped into the open. Zara opened her eyes to the sound of alarms. Red lights flashed across the rooftops, and shadows moved like whispers through the streets. The whole city was tense, holding its breath. People stayed inside, afraid to speak. Guards patrolled in groups of 5 now, their boots echoing like thunder. No one knew exactly what happened, but everyone felt it. The old world was returning, and it was angry. She slipped through narrow alleys until she reached the vendor cart. But the old man wasn't there. Instead, a tiny blinking light sat tucked inside the cup holder. Zara leaned closer and saw numbers counting down. It wasn't a bomb, it was a signal, and it was calling something. She stepped back, heart pounding, above her. The sky rippled, something dark broke through the clouds, invisible at first, then slowly revealing its shape. It was a stealth ship, small but sharp. It didn't make a sound as it hovered above the rooftops. Its design was old, human military, not from this era, not from any current fleet. This ship was supposed to be lost, just like its pilot. Guards looked up, confused. Some aimed their weapons but hesitated. Threx watched from the tower, his jaw tight. He knew that ship. He had seen it in old footage, back when the Phantom Squad was still flesh and not legend. The ship didn't land. It simply hovered, dropping something small and round from its underbelly. It wasn't a bomb. It was a beacon. It hit the ground and pulsed with a low hum. Suddenly, every locked door in the slums clicked open. Every surveillance drone dropped from the sky. Every comm system played the same sound, a voice deep and sharp. "I am not hiding anymore," it said. Zara stood frozen as people ran in panic, but not from the ship, from the name whispered across the city. Ghostblade, in the prison block. On the far edge of the city, a human prisoner sat up straight. He had been locked up for years, forgotten. When he heard the voice, he smiled and whispered, "He's alive." The guards ran to shut down the beacon, but it melted when they touched it. Threx screamed into his communicator, demanding answers, but no one had control anymore. Something older had taken the city's systems. Something built for war. Zara climbed to the rooftop. Her eyes locked on the hovering ship. Then she saw him. The old man, or the warrior he used to be, standing atop a roof nearby. No cart, no disguise, just the black uniform of a legend. She had never seen him like this. His posture was straight, balanced. His movements sharp and quiet. He held no weapon, but he didn't need one. His presence alone sent a clear message. Threx activated his personal dropship. He wasn't going to wait. He flew down into the streets himself, surrounded by elite soldiers. The crowd scattered as the general stepped out. "Show yourself!" Threx shouted, his voice shaking with a mix of rage and fear. "Face me like a soldier." The crowd parted slowly, and from the shadows walked the old man. He didn't run, didn't speak. He just stared at Threx. Their eyes met, the hunter and the hunted. But tonight, the roles were no longer clear. Threx raised his arm to fire, but his weapon didn't respond. The systems were jammed. The old man stopped 5 steps away. "You should have let the past stay buried," he said quietly. Then everything moved fast. The soldiers charged, but he didn't back away. He stepped forward, and in a blur of movement, took down 2 guards with nothing but his hands. Zara couldn't believe it. This wasn't just fighting. This was something else. He moved like smoke, like memory, like a ghost trained in war. The others hesitated. Some even stepped back. Threx screamed for them to attack, but their fear was stronger than their orders. The old man stood over the fallen soldiers and looked at the general. "This is not a warning," he said. "This is your first mistake." Then he vanished into the smoke again, gone before anyone could follow. Zara stared at the rooftop where he had been. She didn't know what was coming next, but she knew the city would never be the same. The sky stayed dark longer than usual that morning. It wasn't the clouds or the sun. It was something else. Fear had stretched across the city like a storm ready to break. People moved quietly, shops stayed closed, and even the birds had gone silent. Everyone felt it, even if they didn't understand it. Something powerful had awakened, and it walked among them again. Zara didn't go to work that day. She sat near the edge of the old market, staring at the roof where she last saw the old man disappear. Her thoughts were a mix of wonder and fear. He had fought like a legend, like someone out of the old stories, but he had bled too. She saw the red on his sleeve before he vanished. That meant he was still human, still able to be hurt. Her brother arrived in a rush, eyes wide. "You need to come with me," he said, pulling her by the hand. "They've put a bounty on him." Zara's heart sank. "How much?" she asked quietly. Her brother looked around before whispering, "Enough to make people forget what he did for them." In another part of the city, old enemies were waking too. Aliens who had fought the humans in the last war now turned. Merchants, smugglers, or drunks were suddenly alert again. They had seen what happened last night, and they recognized the style. The silent steps, the precise strikes, the look in his eyes. It was impossible to forget. One of them, a former war captain named Kalar, dropped his drink when he saw the footage. He stepped outside and said aloud to no one, "Ghostblade walks." Again, word spread across the sector faster than the authorities could contain it. Some feared him, some respected him, but all remembered him. His name wasn't spoken in full, only in whispers. To speak it too loudly was to invite trouble. Zara followed her brother to a hidden room in the lower levels. There, on a flickering screen, played an old military report. It was black and white, grainy, but clear enough. A mission log from 15 years ago. The Phantom Squad had taken out an enemy base in under 8 minutes. And leading them was a man without rank, but with unmatched skill. He wore the same mask the vendor now carried in his pouch. They called him a ghost because he left no trace, her brother said. Zara nodded. And now he's leaving marks again. back on the surface. The old man walked quietly through the shadows. He had changed his clothes, but the way he moved hadn't changed. He wasn't hiding anymore. He was watching, measuring, waiting for the next move. He had seen the bounty posters, had heard the new price on his head. It didn't matter. He had lived through worse. Threk stood in his command room, face cold. He watched the city cameras and slammed his fist on the table. Why? Hasn't he been captured yet? He barked. None of the officers answered. They had seen the footage too. They didn't want to face him either, that night. A small rebel signal pulsed from an old CUN tower. It was weak, almost broken. But the old man found it. He placed his hand against the metal and listened. The voice was familiar, a soldier from long ago. Wounded, hiding, waiting. "I never left," the voice said. "If you're still out there, come find me." Zara watched from behind a wall, unsure if she should follow. He looked older in the dark, slower maybe, but when he moved, he still had the same sharp purpose. He wasn't just fighting anymore. He was searching for something. The next morning, explosions rocked the city's edge. Threx had launched a full sweep, burning buildings just to draw him out. But the old man didn't appear. He had already moved deeper into the underground. Zara finally caught up to him near the tunnels. "You can't win alone," she said. He looked at her, quiet and steady. "I never wanted to win," he said. "I just wanted to be left alone." She stepped closer. "Then why are you still fighting?" He looked past her, toward the smoke rising above the buildings. "Because no one else will." The tower square was quiet, too quiet for a city filled with soldiers and machines. No alarms rang, no patrols moved. Only two figures stood under the broken lights, one armored in gold, the other draped in dust. The alien general held a plasma blade, glowing and proud. The old man held nothing, just a plain metal flask in his hand. "You have no armor, no weapon," the general said, voice shaking beneath his grin. The old man opened the flask and took a slow sip of water. "You'll need both," he replied. The crowd watched from rooftops, windows, shadows. They didn't cheer. They didn't speak. Even the wind waited. The general rushed forward with a roar. His strikes were fast, wide, powerful. But the old man moved like water, bending, slipping, flowing. Not a single strike touched him. He stepped in, one motion, one breath, and with a twist of the general's arm, the blade dropped. A second later, the general was on his knees. The old man didn't strike again. He simply turned away. But the general spat, grabbed a hidden knife, and lunged. Zara screamed from above. But it was already over. The old man spun, grabbed the wrist, and slammed the general to the ground, face first into the dust. Gasps spread through the square. No one expected it to end so fast. No blood was spilled, no death given. Just silence and the sound of the old man closing the lid on his flask. The crowd began to move closer, not to cheer, but to understand. Who was this human? How did he defeat someone half his age, double his size, and wrapped in tech? Zara stepped forward, her voice the first to rise. "He's not just a vendor," she said. "He's the reason you're still alive." One by one, people nodded. Some bowed their heads. Some cried without knowing why. They had mocked him, ignored him, laughed at his silence. But now, the silence had spoken louder than any weapon ever could. The alien soldiers, leaderless and afraid, laid down their arms. They didn't want to fight anymore. Not after what they had seen, because they hadn't seen a battle. They had witnessed a message. Later that night, the old man sat where it had all begun, at the edge of the market, beside a half-fixed cart. Zara brought him tea in a tin cup. She sat beside him, not asking questions. He looked at her and smiled softly. "Are you going to stay now?" she asked. He didn't answer right away. He looked at the stars, then at the quiet streets. "Maybe," he said, "as long as the water still flows and people still remember." She rested her head on his shoulder. "They will," she whispered. "Because you reminded them." He nodded once, but in his mind, the faces of his old squad still walked beside him. He wasn't alone, not anymore. And for the first time in many years, he felt like maybe peace was possible, not because he fought, but because he stopped needing to, because sometimes the deadliest warrior is the one who teaches others how to stand, without fear, without blood, without shouting, just by being there, just by surviving, just by remembering. The old man took one final sip from his flask, then closed his eyes under the stars, and finally, the city slept in peace.